Hey everybody, welcome to Forkless Cafe, your weekly DLT insights from Hedera Hashgraph. My name is Andrew. I'm Hedera's social media manager, and we are going to start things off with a quick intro, and we're going to get things going here because we have a lot of content to review with everybody today. So, as always, we have a disclaimer that we have to share with everybody, but our objective here is to share interesting news in the industry and in the Hashgraph dApp ecosystem. We'll have a guest intro. We've got a special guest joining us today. Then we'll move over to industry insights, dApp highlights, Hedera highlights, and then Hero of the Week, which I know everybody is looking forward to. So without further delay, we have a special guest joining us today, Supreme Max. He is a passionate individual for technology that actually makes a difference, makes an impact in the world. And he's been following Hedera Hashgraph for the project since November 2017. So Supreme Max, why don't you say hi to everybody?
Hi, I'm a little bit shy, but once I get going, everything's gonna be good.
And Supreme Max, where are you coming to us today? Where are you coming from today?
Oh, I'm in Vancouver.
Right on, good stuff. I'm back in Canada myself actually, but I'm outside Toronto, so not too close to you, but back on native soil for myself. We also have Sharon, who is manning the live chat for everybody today. So if you're joining us, let us know where you're coming from, where you're watching the stream from, and if you have any comments or questions regarding the content that we're discussing today, or if you have any questions for our guest, Supreme Max, please drop that in the chat, and Sharon will make sure to share that with us so that we can include you in the discussion. We like to highlight certain information that's been trending online. This provides us that opportunity to really share the content that matters to you, because we can see what the community is really engaging in, what kind of content, and sometimes it's just a really great way to review some of the big news that was shared online over the previous week. Okay, so I'll give you a quick heads up on what we're going to be covering today, and then we'll jump into the articles. We're going to talk about some of the statements recently made by the president of China. Bakkt had some big news here recently to launch crypto consumer app. Jack Dorsey made some statements regarding joining Libra. Hell no. Deutsche Telekom units to launch blockchain service marketplaces. Mobi explained. We talked about Mobi briefly last week, but we got this new article that dives in a little bit more detail that I thought we'd share. And then how should crypto prepare for Google's quantum supremacy, which was big news this past week. We got a dApp highlight here regarding Chainlink. And then we're going to move over to some Hedera highlights, blockchain versus Hashgraph, Deutsche Telekom, some more Deutsche Telekom news. What is Hedera Hashgraph, a guide for the beginners? And then we got a couple social sizzlers for everybody. Okay, so let's, oops, oh no, and I ruined the surprise. Okay, so I'm going to minimize my screen here and move on over to the news. So we have the president of China actually made some really interesting statements recently. It's been thought that this was the first, it says right down here, the Chinese president's statements on blockchain are believed to be the first in-depth remarks on the technology. So it says here, blockchain technology has a wide array of applications within China, listing topics ranging from financing businesses to mass transit and poverty alleviation. We must take the blockchain as an important breakthrough for independent innovation of core technologies. And he moves on to say here, we must clarify the main direction, increase investment, focus on a number of key core technologies, and accelerate the development of blockchain technology and industrial innovation. He says something further down here that actually caught my eye down in the article. He says here, his speech also called for the creation of Blockchain Plus. And this is interesting, a platform alluding to personal development such as education, employment, and food and medicinal safety, among other basic needs. I actually haven't come across a lot of other world leaders touch on an idea like this, Blockchain Plus, alluding to personal development. So that I thought that was actually worth noting because it's I do spend a lot of time reviewing content about DLT technology, and I don't see a lot of mentions like that in the different publications. And I should have said at the beginning of our live stream that we are going to be including all these links that we're discussing in today's stream in the description below after we're done the stream. So if you are watching the recording, you'll be able to follow along and click on the articles as we discuss them. We're not going to dive too deep in each article because it would take forever if that's the case. And so I'm just going to highlight some of the big points that that would be of interest to you, hopefully. And Supreme Max, please feel free to jump in if you have some thoughts that you would like to share about some of this stuff as well.
I do actually. I like your shirt.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. Did you get one of these? Did you get one of our open access t-shirts?
Not yet. I'm slow on deciding on shopping.
Oh, well, you'll have to let me know. You've been kind enough to join us as a guest on today's live stream, so I should definitely send you a shirt.
Cool.
All right. Moving on here, we got Bakkt to launch crypto consumer app in first half of 2020. This is some interesting news here. We got a quote down here. I have strong conviction that by driving more integration and efficiency across digital wallets, transaction processing, and payment acceptance, there are meaningful opportunities for merchants and consumers to seamlessly interact using digital assets in ways that have not been previously considered. And she goes on, I'm going to say her name wrong probably, but Blendina wrote, adding, it is often said that digital assets will be successful when consumers don't have to think about the technology underlining them. And I think this is an important point to really highlight for everybody, because at the end of the day, no, I don't think the average person really understands how the internet works. I don't think they understand how credit card systems work, but people still have adopted this new way of living, or I shouldn't say new way of living, but everybody's used to using the internet now, but couldn't accurately describe to you how the internet-based protocol actually functions. And at the end of the day, this is probably one of those factors that is actually what's the word I'm looking for here, is actually impeding mass adoption, because there is a lot of focus and intention on blockchain technology and DLT, on the different advantages and disadvantages of different DLT platforms out there, and not a lot of emphasis on the value brought to the end user. So it's interesting statement that they make here. And moving on here, The Verge has an article here saying Jack Dorsey says hell no to joining Libra. The article starts with highlighting an event that Jack Dorsey was speaking at. It says here, at the same time, Dorsey was broadly enthusiastic about more decentralized cryptocurrencies, seeing them as part of an emergent international online community. He has some interesting thoughts around that. And then the article basically moves on comparing the Facebook Libra project, and was talking about the recent Mark Zuckerberg event where he was testifying in front of Congress for over 6 hours.
There isn't much love around the Libra project. To be fair, people don't see Libra. When they see Libra, they see Facebook. They see the face of Facebook. They see all the issues that Facebook have had over the months, and sometimes going back a couple of years. Maybe they don't want to have a bad reputation association with Facebook because of it. I think the project has potential. It's not exactly what the governance model of Dara Ashcroft has to offer. I mean, they're going to, whoever joins Libra stays in power for as long as they want. I didn't see any veto where they have the option to kick someone out.
Oh, so you took that? Wow, so you took a really close look at their governance model then.
Yes, I don't want to use the word, but it kind of mimics what I think it goes back to what I think it was what Matt said. It kind of mimics what Dara is doing, but they went their own way. They just wanted to have a foot in, and whoever is joining it on Libra kind of stays there for, well, as long as they can. That's what's my understanding. I mean, they can always change that in the future and say, okay, well, we'll make it more decentralized and everyone gets to have their own opinion. And then if you want to kick us out, you can kick us out if you want. But yeah, no one's seeing this as a decentralized system.
Yeah, that's a good point. Hedera Hashgraph is implemented certain aspects that will limit collusion and increase the decentralization of our governance model. And one of the points that you were just alluding to there is that a member with the Hedera Hashgraph governance model can only serve a maximum of 2 consecutive terms of 3 years each, 6 years, and then they have to vacate that seat. So there's a number of systems put into place that make further ensure that the Hedera governance model is decentralized and will limit collusion. They really did think of all the problems that may cause problems down the line, and unfortunately, it seems like Libra didn't really pay that kind of attention, I suppose, and adopt those aspects. But yeah, and like you said earlier, yeah, unfortunately, for the Libra project, it does seem that people are associating Facebook's reputation, and they highlight that here down later on in the article as well. They are associating the lack of transparency and security with various problems that they've had recently, and clearly Jack Dorsey here has some very strong feelings about the project as well. So moving on here, we got Deutsche Telekom unit to launch blockchain services marketplace. So we were just talking about the Hedera governance model, and for those who are new to the Hedera Hashgraph conversation, we are still in the process of announcing those governing council members, because we will have up to 39 members. And Deutsche Telekom was actually among the first 5 that joined the governing council. And they're doing a lot of cool stuff. It says here that Deutsche Telekom subsidiary T-Systems announced the launch of the German blockchain ecosystem, GBE, marketplace for blockchain services. T-Systems is working with other group subsidiaries, T-Labs, T-System Multimedia. And one thing they said down here, where was it? They basically point out that they're focusing on supply chain, which a lot of people have noticed DLT technology is a no-brainer for supply chain management. And where does it say here? It says right here, generally, research and development of new technology is the prerogative of large corporates, but they're clearly targeting small and medium-sized businesses which can launch their own applications on a blockchain system managed by T-Systems. So they're basically trying to lower the bar of entry, which I don't know why my left ear is looking all wonky. It keeps catching my attention, but the virtual background is not doing me any favors today. It says down here, Deutsche Telekom has numerous blockchain activities. It was amongst the first 5, like I said, firms to sign up for the governing council of the public distributed ledger Hedera Hashgraph. Its subsidiary T-Labs is also a member of the new Convergence Alliance that focuses on the interaction of IoT, AI, and blockchain. Yeah. And moving on here. So I mentioned earlier that we discussed Moby a little bit last week, but this article popped up on October 27th, and I thought it was worth revisiting. There's some really big names, some really big players that are getting involved in here: BMW, General Motors, Renault, Ford, Honda, Hyundai, Bosch, and then some non-related automotive partners as well: IBM, Hyperledger, Fetch.ai, and others. And this is an amazing use case. They're talking like, this is a great article I would recommend for anyone, even if you're not interested in transportation or cars, because the things that they're talking about here, they're talking about limiting air pollution. And I saw an article today on the news where they were talking about different jurisdictions around the planet that just have terrible, terrible smog, and no one can go outside without a mask on their face. And in this article, they're highlighting aspects where they can use blockchain technology where effectively forces the vehicle to be only on electric when it's within a certain jurisdiction. So they're testing that right now. They've got all kinds of different pilot programs that are testing these really cool things. Another Moby, I'm sorry?
No, sorry, I was just gonna say that could be pretty interesting.
Yeah. I mean, anything that's gonna support the environment in that way, I think is great news.
We definitely have to do something about that, and I think in their own way, there is pulling their own weight for having something that's efficient.
Exactly. Yeah, our consensus protocol is not proof of work, and it's been widely publicized that the proof of work DLTs out there are unfortunately very wasteful when it comes to energy consumption. And we follow a DAG, or a directed distillate graph, that's on a proof of stake system, which uses a tiny, tiny fraction of energy. And that's why it's much more energy efficient and much more eco-friendly, much more green. And so that's highlighting that advantage that the Hedera Hashgraph DLT brings. And it says here, another Moby pilot carried out in May this year could see payments going to cars as well as from them. It aims to share electric vehicle data with smart grids in order to stabilize the supply of power in the grid. In future iterations, EVs could discharge surplus energy into the grid when they're not being used, and providing the owner with an income stream. So what they're talking about in this article is that each vehicle would essentially have its own passport, its own identification. And that's why you have all these different auto manufacturers coming together, because this is clearly a massive initiative where all the manufacturers are going to have to agree on some universal way to give this passport to your vehicle. And this is just fantastic that, you know, in the event that there's a power outage or some kind of drop in the system, and you have all of these EVs spread out through your community, your jurisdiction, they can actually start pumping power back into the network, and then the owner of those vehicles would actually receive an income stream, which I think is just brilliant. Yeah, this is a great article. I'm trying to think if there's anything else here that I want to highlight for everybody. It does touch on a little bit of the downside as well, where, you know, some people may not want to have their driving habits so closely monitored. So it does touch on the pros and the cons of this movement, but clearly there's enough interest built around this that this is getting a lot of attention. Okay, moving on. So this was the big news that was announced this past week. How should crypto prepare for Google's quantum supremacy? And I have to admit, I've been geeking out over the term quantum supremacy lately. I know Vice News did a great piece on this recently too. And here's a picture of their quantum computer. It says down here, quantum processors work by using superposition and entanglement. I'm not going to even begin to try to explain entanglement to anybody, but my understanding is superposition, and maybe Supreme Max would understand this better than me, that in the current traditional computing model, a bit is either a 1 or a 0, and superposition is the term that would describe where a bit could be anything between a 1 and a 0. And the example that I hear a lot of people giving is flipping a coin. One side of the coin is 1, the other side of the coin is a 0. But if you're flipping the coin or spinning that coin, that would describe superposition, where it could be anything in between those two states.
Yes, it's actually both state at the same time. You observe it at one moment, it's one state. You observe it at the other moment, it's a different state. That's why it makes quantum computing so difficult to use, like linear computers. That's what they use. That's what they call it. The traditional computers, linear computers. And
Gotcha.
I don't know how that's going to affect the security, because that came up once on his simple explanation of Hashgraph, how that would affect the security of the Gossip protocol. But I know he said something about having hashes that are secure against quantum attacks, deciphering encryptions. And then I'd be interested to see where it's going. I mean, let's be honest. They showed impressive numbers, and I still haven't seen anyone decrypting ledgers anytime soon.
Yeah, it's still very early days, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to highlight this article for everybody, because it really does, at least when I read the article, it really does emphasize the fact that no one needs to worry about any, like, the sky is falling tomorrow, because some people talk about quantum computing as in the game is over already, and it's still very much early days. But it continue, and I love the example that they give here, which is why I'm highlighting it for everybody. These odd quantum behaviors essentially allow a quantum chip to process massive amounts of data simultaneously. To better understand it, imagine that, like Dr. Strange, a quantum processor can see every possible outcome at once and then statistically pick the most likely answer. This means time-consuming programs like factoring large numbers, finding the two large numbers that, when multiplied, makes another large number, is trivial for quantum computer. I love that they used a comic book character reference there. I'm a geek, so I had to point that out.
I just like the first image they use on the article. That's Quantum Leap. By the
Quantum
way.
Leap. Yeah, the actor
Yeah.
in Quantum Leap. Yeah,
That's how you know you're old. You remember that?
Exactly. Yeah. They use the title right here. Quantum Leap. Yeah. No, I picked up on that too. And yeah, they pulled out a quote here from Vitalik. They talk about Shor's algorithm. We're going to touch on that a little bit here in Grover's algorithm. What else? They draw a parallel between Y2K. Remember the Y2K problem that everyone was worried the planes were going to start falling out of the sky and whatnot, and so people are drawing parallels with what was happening back in those days. So it's a great article. If you're interested in the whole quantum supremacy technology and what is or what would not be considered post-quantum resistant, then this might be an article you want to check out too. Okay, so moving on. What do we have next here? So this is a little DApp news that we wanted to include in today's stream. Startup arm of software giant Oracle names 20 companies for Chainlink initiative. This is pretty cool. Oracle is one of the biggest software companies in the world. As such, the firm's startup division made waves in the cryptoverse back in June when it unveiled an initiative to help select startups monetize their APIs using Chainlink's decentralized Oracle technology. Now we know the first companies set to participate in the initiative effort. Unveiled by the Oracle for Startups team on October 28th, the first round of participants are set to help pave the way for later oncomers to the initiative, which will see Chainlink's oracles used in tandem with smart contracts on the Oracle blockchain platform. I read a long time ago that they say that 80% of all smart contracts in existence depend on real world data. So the ultimate question is, how do you get that real world data from the tangible world onto the smart contract in a reliable, authentic way? And this is where Chainlink comes in. This is their unique value proposition, and they've been making huge press over the past year, maybe more, about the progress that they're making in this area. So this article here, if you just scroll down, will give you an idea of the very diverse startups: agricultural supply chain, trust networks, IoT, cash flow management, blah, blah. There's all kinds of startups here that are part of this initiative. So something to pay attention to as well. Okay, moving on. All right, so we're moving on to our Hedera highlights now. There's been some articles published recently that compare blockchain with Hashgraph. And it's a growing topic, probably because we reached open access back on September 16th. So our mainnet, it hasn't even been live for 2 months yet. And I thought this was a great article. There was a couple little things in here that I kind of liked this description. I don't know if you had a chance to review this one here, SupremeMax, but the blockchain can even stockpile legal documents like degrees and certificates of education, marriages, birth, etc. Many like to call it the worldwide ledger. And I actually hadn't heard that term before, worldwide ledger. Have you come across that anywhere?
The quotes, not really. Maybe they're trying to coin a, a new catchphrase. Worldwide ledger goes on the. I mean, it's a bold statement. I think that you need some kind of governance behind it.
Oh yeah. Good point. Fair point. And yeah, I wanted to touch on governance a little bit more as well. And governance is we've discussed in previous episodes on Forklift Cafe how a lot of people focus on the decentralized aspect of the technology, but then unfortunately a lot of people forget the fact that a lot of DLT platforms out there have a very centralized form of governance. So how far can you really, how decentralized is your technology if you're being governed by a centralized authority? And that's another reason why Hedera Hashgraph has gone to extreme lengths to ensure that we have a fully decentralized model. You would never want to have too much power in the hands of any one individual or even any one entity, any one enterprise. Because it's just too much power for a single entity to wield, right? That's the idea. So, and one thing I wanted to point out, I thought this article was great, but there was a couple things here that kind of stood out here. it has they're talking about the Hashgraph technology here. It has a powerfully up consensus algorithm called a gossip protocol. It's impeccably fast, processing over 250,000 transactions approximately per second. One thing I want to highlight for everybody is that we just launched. We just launched less than 2 months ago, and we launched out of the gate at 10,000 transactions per second. And the goal here is to scale up as the need arises. We don't yet have our main net is still very hasn't been open access for very long, and there are more developers and more dApps being built on the mainnet every day. And later on in this article, actually, it does highlight one dApp, particular AdsDAX, that is just performing an amazing amount of transactions. And so as there becomes a need for us to ramp things up and scale things up, we'll be able to do that. And one thing, if you're brand new to the conversation, one thing to understand is that Hedera Hashgraph was built from the ground up with sharding in mind. So the idea is that scalability will never be an issue. Scalability was always at the forefront, and will never be a bottleneck for Hedera Hashgraph, because there's always going to be a way to deploy sharding and scale up the transactions per second, so that we'll definitely reach 250,000 transactions per second and exceed that as the need arises. So it talks about virtual voting here. Compares this chart here compares between Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Hedera. What else? And I think it talks about AdsDAX in this, or I might be thinking of another article.
Oh, I think I saw a little mention of Byzantine under a little bit solo security mechanism. Was it? Oh yeah.
Down there.
Yeah. So asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerance.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
So if someone looks for a reason, just one reason to actually love this project, that alone is sufficient, because it's been said before, people would prefer security over speed, especially if you're doing transact of millions on a single day. You need that security.
Exactly right. Yeah, if you have a mass of extremely valuable transaction, you're going to want to care that you want to use a platform that has the very best gold standard in security that's available, which is asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerance, ABFT. And the way it's been described to me is that the internet, as it was being constructed in its early days, wasn't overly concerned with security. They were more concerned with speed, because everyone using the internet can be anyone who's ever gone to a website that takes a little too long to load knows what I'm talking about here, because you're more prone to close it down and just move on to something else, because no one has the patience to wait for the website to load up or your app to load up on your phone. But now in recent years, we've unfortunately witnessed these massive data breaches where people's private details were exposed, and anyone who's ever unfortunately gone through identity theft will be far more worried about the level of security moving forward. So yeah, and it talks about here in the fast facts here, the speed of the gossip protocol and virtual voting algorithms, the asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerance. And another point here, actually, this is a good one too. A blockchain miner can choose and delay the order of transactions by placing them in future blocks and prohibiting their entry into the system. Hashgraphs, on the other hand, use timestamping, which restricts an end user to tamper the flow of transactions as he or she is not authorized for manipulation. So that's something to take into account too. People like to argue about what's decentralized and what's distributed and what's not. And unfortunately, it seems like the blockchain miners themselves actually have far more power and control than what is plainly obvious to the regular person.
But to all the naysayers, we are all centralized. We're all on one planet. No, it's a matter of perspective.
Unless you want to talk to Elon Musk, then
that's true. He may be the first one to actually have a public ledger going all the way to Mars. Would that be like 8 minutes of latency?
So we're centralized on one planet for now, is what I'm saying.
Yes, yes, exactly.
All right, moving on here. So here we actually have more Deutsche Telekom news from Ledger Insights. Telefonica, I'm not going to say that right. Vodafone trial blockchain for roaming payments. This is cool. This is such a bigger use case than I read this and I immediately started thinking of other examples. Calculating inter-carrier payments is a cumbersome task. And speaking from personal experience here, I do a lot of international travel and I'm constantly on using different SIM cards and using different mobile services. Companies need to record minutes spent by a consumer on a roaming network, reconcile the data with its roaming partner, and then send or receive payments. This is a mostly manual process and is prone to errors and inefficiencies. Blockchain can potentially streamline this process, and smart contracts can expedite the settlement between carriers. So this whole point of reconciling the data between service providers, this is a massive use case in my opinion, because it's not just when it comes to cell phone providers, but look at airlines. Because how many times have you had to fly from point A to point B and you're using more than one airline carrier, and they have to reconcile their fees and payments so that all their services are being paid for. So there's the examples here are almost endless. And then down here, they do actually, again, where is it? They do touch on the fact that Deutsche Telekom is part of our governance model as well here too. Right there, Hedera Hashgraph. Founding governing board members of the distributed ledger Hedera Hashgraph. So yeah, Deutsche Telekom is doing some really, really cool stuff. It's good to see. Okay, we got another big article here. This is a massive one. Hedera Hashgraph next generation DLT. Challenging blockchains. So see, they highlighted here correctly that it's 10,000 transactions per second for now in the beginning. As the need occurs, we'll gladly be scaling things up, and we're scaling things up in a methodical way. So gives you a good description of what Hedera Hashgraph is and talks about what blockchain is as well. Something that I'd really like to highlight on this article is right down here. The only thing held apart is Hashgraph technology, which is patented by Swirlds to avoid competing ledgers using Hashgraph technology from springing up. The Hashgraph platform was created by Enterprise Applications, and Hedera was built on top of the Hashgraph. The mainnet beta launch of Hedera Hashgraph was completed on August 2. The beta launch. So the beta launch, I think they're confusing the terms here, but beta launch, it was launched in August 2018, and then it became open access. So yeah, I think they may have messed up their dates here.
Yeah, they definitely had something wrong there.
Yeah. So I guess a little reminder here for people who are reading articles from third parties. It's always a good idea to go to the hedera.com website to just confirm information too, because yeah, the mainnet did launch in August 2018, and open access was just this recent September, on September 16th. And the reason why I'm highlighting this section right here for everybody though is because it talks about the patent, but it doesn't really explain why until like further down. So some people may actually read about the patent information here and then just because they don't agree with patents, they may just close the article down. And then when you scroll down further, governance, stability, no forking. This is why the Hedera Hashgraph DLT has a patent on the technology, because we have legal and technical controls to prevent forking, and there's very real reasons to have a guarantee not to fork. Where Hedera Hashgraph, to my knowledge, is the only platform that is offering this guarantee not to fork, and there's all kinds of use cases why this is valuable. Tangible assets is probably one of the easiest examples. Because if you were to buy a real estate property on a DLT, and then that was recorded on the ledger, and then you go ahead and sold that property, that transaction would be recorded on one ledger. And so now you have two different ledgers showing the same property is owned by two different people. And so anytime you deal with tokenization of tangible assets, you're going to want to make sure that there's a no forking guarantee. Also, I want to say probably 3 or 4 Forkless Cafes ago, we talked about some news that was released by the IRS stating that there could a fork could actually trigger a taxable event for anyone who owns the tokens on that platform. So there's very real concerns around forking. And in the early days, that was used as a tool for the community to overcome certain challenges and obstacles. But we've recognized in the last couple of years that forks actually create a lot of instability and chaos in the marketplace. And unfortunately, it's just recently where some people are really starting to see that frustration and that chaos is causing a lot of instability and is actually preventing the widespread mass adoption that we all want to see for this technology, so everyone's lives can improve. So yeah, I just want to highlight that because it mentions the patent, but in this article, but doesn't exactly, in my opinion, doesn't really explain the importance of the patent. And if and the other thing that I should point out too, and it does mention in the article here that our code at version 1 will be open review, meaning not open source, because again, if it was open source, that makes it forkable, and we don't want this to be forkable.
It's about establishing trust.
Yeah. So yeah, you like if you have something you want to add, please jump in. Yeah.
Oh yeah, my OCD was kicking in because they misspelled there on the article. There's a spot they misspelled it.
Hadera or something. Yeah, I saw that too.
The sad part, and this is human nature, we do things thinking everything is fine. We assume everything is fine. We assume we're always safe, and then something bad happens, and that's when you see people investing in insurance and so something like that. People shouldn't. How could I say this? People should be a little bit smarter. You know it's out there. You know it's going to happen eventually. You're gonna make an app. That app's going to be amazing. You went on a ledger that's open source, and then you're like, oh, if something happens, I'm just going to fork it and continue to be able to work on my app. But here's the thing: there's more people who tend to break things, to do things maliciously, than you'll find people that are there to help you. So if you have a network that you know your app is not going to go anywhere, no one's going to manipulate this, the little freedom, and I put that in between quote, that you think you might be losing, you're getting a full security. It's not like 99% security. You're getting a full security that your app is not going to go somewhere else out on a different platform and it starts acting really weird. I hate to say this, I see this all the time. People complaining about their something going wrong, and they should have seen it coming. And there is, I mean, how many times did Edera try to voice that how important no fork is? And I still see it in the community, people thinking that, yeah, it's not a problem. Then they come back around and say, yeah, I should have listened to that. You don't need to get burned. It's there right now. Use it.
Yeah. No, and I've seen how active you are on YouTube. I know you're always reviewing comments in the different threads and whatnot in YouTube and SupremeMax. You're very knowledgeable on this subject, and I've seen many times you jumping in and helping people understand this content a lot easier. But I mean, to be fair, we're all learning. We're all still learning, and it's funny. You just said something that reminded me of something that Tony Robbins always says. And if anybody who's watching this, if you're into personal development, you probably are into Tony Robbins. And one of his popular lines is that leaders anticipate and losers react. And I truly do believe that Hedera Hashgraph has anticipated the solutions that the no forking guarantee will bring. And at the end of the day, if a developer or an enterprise wants to have the forking ability, then hey, they have dozens, if not hundreds of probably hundreds of options that they can use to go have that have a forking ability that they can deploy, and if that's what they're looking for. But if the enterprise is going to be considering investing possibly millions of dollars into an application, we suspect it's our belief that they're only going to do so if there's no risk of a fork happening a few weeks or a few months or a few years after they deploy millions of dollars into a project, because that would risk their investment at the end of the day. And so finally, developers and enterprises will have a no forking guarantee. And any developers out there who are looking at building a high throughput, low latency DApp, distributed application, then you have an option. You can go start building on the Hedera Hashgraph mainnet, and you'll be very pleased that you did when you start seeing the performance metrics. We post our performance metrics on the website, and a lot of people have been raving about those. We've been reaching finality at 2-point-something seconds, and we were originally only publicizing 3 to 5 seconds. So it was a big deal when we saw that the finality we were reaching was only 2 seconds. So it's a big difference from an hour or 2 hours, and even then, other DLT platforms don't actually reach full finality.
It's a good point.
Right on. So we like to wrap things up with a couple of social sizzlers. And this is my way to share with you what posts outperformed the rest. And it always blows me away to see how any post that I put out there on smart contracts, how it performs. Smart contracts are clearly a subject that a lot of people are very interested in. Anytime I post anything on smart contracts, it always does well compared to the rest. So, and this is a page on the Hedera.com website that helps educate you on the smart contract service that we offer on the mainnet, on the network. And so check that out on Hedera.com or go to our Twitter account and you'll find it there. And then had to throw this one in too. It ties into what we were just discussing earlier on. Our 41st episode on the Gossip About Gossip podcast hosted by Paul Manson. We had our head of cryptography on the as a guest, and this tweet did exceptionally well because the quantum supremacy and quantum resistance for crypto and DLT is just really big news right now. A lot of people are talking about it, and so I just want to quickly share the YouTube video with everybody here too. It's only a 21-minute podcast. Won't take you very long to get through it, and it covers a wide range of information here. How is quantum supremacy going to impact DLT cryptography? What does cryptography research tell us about Shor's algorithm and Grover's algorithm? Are any ledgers quantum resistant? How does quantum superposition in computing affect the future of DLT? So if you are very active in the DLT world and this quantum computing conversation is interesting to you, highly recommend to check out our podcast here. I think that'll help you out.
Sorry, do we have time? I had the link actually. If it's okay to share, I would put it in the chat. Let's see here.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know if you can see the one I just posted.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if you can see. Yeah, and you want me to bring this up?
Sure. I found this article actually pretty interesting.
Sure.
So,
what do you got here? IoT devices.
Yes. So the part I like is expert estimate that this number could be as high as 40 billion by 2025. Basically, devices talking to each other.
Yep.
The word is gossiping. So when devices are talking to each other and they're gossiping, on what ledger would you want to have those devices protected? I'm actually surprised they didn't mention anything about ledgers, and I mean this article feels quite incomplete, but I like this article just to but I don't want to put panic into people's, but that's 6 years away, actually almost 5 years away, where we're going to have 40 billion devices talking to each other. Imagine the mayhem if these devices are not secured.
Wow. And it looks like this was published just a month ago. What seems like a great idea now could come back to haunt us. See, that's like, thanks for highlighting this. And if you're just joining us, I'll let you remind everybody that we're going to include all the links of the articles in the description below this video. And this comes back to the philosophy and having this conversation about a lot of these exponential technologies that are being developed right in front of us. And a lot of people are their initial reaction is, oh, we're years away from that. That'll never happen, or we're years away from that. And it's really quite impressive to see what people are actually working on real world. And the thing about exponential technologies is it's really hard to really perceive where we're going to be, because 10 years ago, no one would have been able to predict accurately how reliant we all are on smartphones. There's no way anyone would have been able to predict how we're glued to these devices. So it's really difficult to predict today where we're going to be in 10 years with IoT or blockchain or DLT or AI. So yeah, 40 billion by 2025. That's very cool. Thanks for sharing.
That's not scary at all.
All right, so I'll pull up the it's asking for my email. I'm not going to give you my
yeah.
So I'm going to pull up the presentation again, and I've already ruined it for everybody. But I would like to congratulate Nick S with #info for being our hero of the week. And for those of you who don't know Nick, he is the creator of #info. Highly recommend you go check him out. That's his Telegram handle, and he's a very important member of the community. He's actually been a guest on this show on the Forklifts Cafe, and I'm ashamed to admit that we're just making him hero of the week now. Yeah, Nick, if you're watching, I apologize. You certainly deserve to be hero of the week much earlier than today, and so reach out to me, or I'll reach out to you after this live stream, and I'll get you a discount code for the online store. Just a small appreciation to show our gratefulness for you for what you do for the community. You have a great Telegram chat that if you're watching the live stream, you'll probably find some value in joining his Telegram chat if you're active on Telegram. And you're not going to come across a more authentic, nice human being in DLT, in my opinion here. So, looks like I got another chat here. Oh, we got a couple questions. We got some questions from Sharon. So we got 2 questions. Let's see here. At present time, is the ILP pretty secure? I'm a novice. What would he be referring to with ILP?
Well, abbreviations are my strong point. I will be honest here. What is he saying?
ILP. I'm not sure what he's referring to there. Maybe we can come back to that one, or you can message in another question. Dave Hooper says, any thoughts on China's claim to be all in on blockchain now? They've made it illegal to talk down blockchain. Yeah, Dave, that's a really good point. I think China is a big player in many conversations, because I know they've been they seem to be in a race for technology for quantum computing and blockchain and various technologies. And I think at the end of the day, if a technology that is able to help numerous people across the globe communicate in a more effective, safe, and secure way, then we can't go wrong. But that's a good question. I'm sure China is working very diligently to develop some technology to get ahead. And I think we all witnessed that the recent announcement with Facebook Libra almost spurred on or encouraged a lot more movement with China and probably some other countries as well.
China is moving into a position that could be actually quite scary. So if their blockchain is working as intended, they do have the great internet firewall, which if they put that up, then most of Bitcoin is sitting behind that firewall. They could literally flip public ledgers over in a day. The moment they can get their blockchain going, I wouldn't be surprised if the Chinese government does that.
Wow. Yeah, that's a scary thought. But that comes back into the whole decentralization conversation, that it's important to have a network that's very decentralized and not have, well, in the case of blockchain, too many mining computation power focused in any one area, right? Because of, I mean, it could be anything. It could be the great firewall, or it could be a power outage. It could be a terrorist attack. It could be anything. And then all of a sudden your entire mainnet, your entire network is vulnerable. So it's an important conversation for sure. But yeah, I think a lot of people are paying attention to what China's doing. I think you'd be hard pressed to be involved in technology and not want to pay attention to what China's up to. But and I know they're in some kind of race to dominate quantum computing as well, right? So yeah, good question. I don't know if anybody would have the answer to that one. Yeah.
Sean Thompson questions. You should try with Greg Scollard in Discord.
Yeah.
I think he'd be better at answering that question.
Is that a technical question? ILP.
Yeah, interledger protocol. He's asking about how secure is it. Greg would be the best person to answer that one.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, yeah. Okay, understood. If that's what he's referring to, then yeah, I would highly recommend for any developers who are watching this live stream right now, you have to join our Discord chat. You're going to find a lot of value in that. It's a large group of active developers in that chat, and I will make sure to include all of the links for today's chat and a link to our Discord chat in the description below this video. So if you're watching the recording, you can find that too. Okay, awesome. All right, so in a quick reminder here for everybody to check out the Hedera.com blog because we're always publishing all kinds of information on there. In our experience, it's difficult to get enough value out in a single tweet or Facebook post or LinkedIn post or what have you. But we have a lot of people in the team that, like our technical architect Paul Madsen, creates a lot of articles for us on our blog Hedera.com/blog. And if you can't find the answer there, then you could always comment on any of our social media platforms, and we will try our very best to provide the content that you're looking for. We also have our FAQ, which is help.hedera.com. And you could put a search in the search bar to see if you can gain access to some of the content you're looking for. Where that FAQ is just becoming more and more robust every single day. And I know a lot of people find a lot of value there as well. So, yeah, Sharon, how are we doing on the questions there? Was that the only help that we were able to give there today?
Yeah, those were some of the key questions. Thanks so much.
All right. Good stuff. Yeah, and SupremeX, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I know you've been an important part of the community for a very long time, and like we were saying earlier, you've been following the project since November 2017, and I know you provide a lot of help for people, especially in YouTube. So thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it, and appreciate you staying up a little later than usual, maybe.
Yeah, I think I can't sign off until I see more thumbs like on the video stream. It's like a few more, and then I'll be able to log off.
Right on. Good stuff. Well, I really appreciated having you on here. And so for those of you who are new to our conversation, we do these weekly DLT insights. We share these insights with you on these live streams. Next week, we're actually going to change to Tuesday to recognize Veterans Day or Remembrance Day, depending on where you are and what you call that day. So we generally go on Mondays, but just wanted to quickly share with everybody next week we'll do it on Tuesday, and we'll make sure we post what time we're going. We did it at a slightly different time today, but next time we'll probably go back to our regularly scheduled time, and we'll make sure we post that for everybody. But thanks for joining us. We hope we'll see you next week. Smash that like button if you want more content like this, and leave a question or a comment for us down below, and we'll get you some more information that you want to see. Let us know what kind of guests you want us to bring on the show too. Let us know who you want us to have on the show, and we can make sure we'll reach out to those individuals and see if we can bring you more value. But thanks for joining us today, and we'll talk to you guys next week.